Hey guys, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? I got calls. One. Being cute. If you get anything from my work, a mic drop, an epiphany, a new author to explore, a new book to read, please consider supporting my work. All the information is in the Dropbox below. And I really want to thank everybody who has helped me in this journey. It's been a year. It's been insane. Many of you have saved my life, and I really want to put that out there and thank you. As this is like a Thanksgiving weekend, I want to thank everybody for that. I really do. It means a lot. Second video of the day. Again, I'm in the middle of like finalizing moves and still boxing stuff because I had to live here for some span of time. So I'm kind of finishing up doing all of that. So haven't been doing that many videos, but I'm going to continue doing what I can, when I can, and hopefully I get everything moved and get situated not too far from there. Pray. The Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. We're going to continue stanza 7, part 3. When the one becomes two, the threefold appears. The three are linked into one, and it is our thread, O Lano, the heart of the man plant, called Saptaparana. When the one becomes two, the threefold appears. To wit, when the one eternal drops its reflection into the region of manifestation, that reflection, the ray, differentiates the water of space. Or in words of the Book of the Dead, chaos ceases through the effulgence of the ray of primordial light, dissipating total darkness by the help of the great magic power of the word of the central sun. Damn it, my teeth. Sorry, guys. Chaos becomes male, female, and water incubated through light, and the threefold being issue as its firstborn. Osiris, or Ra, creates his own limbs, like Brahma, by creating the gods destined to personify his phases. During the cycle, the Egyptian Ra, issuing from the deep, is the divine universal soul in its manifested aspect. And it is so Naraya, the Purusha, conceited in Akasha and present in ether. This is the metaphysical explanation and refers to the very beginning of the evolution, or as we should rather say, of theogony. The meaning of the stanza, when explained from another standpoint in its reference to the mystery of man and his origin, is still more difficult to comprehend. In order to form a clear conception of what is meant by the one becoming two, then being transformed into the threefold, his student has to make himself thoroughly acquainted with what we call rounds. If he refers to esoteric Buddhism, the first attempt to sketch out an approximate outline of archaic cosmogony, he will find that by a round is meant the serial evolution of nascent material nature of the 7 globes of our chain, with their mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms, man being there included in the latter and standing at the head of it during the whole period of a life cycle. The latter would be called by the Brahmins a day of Rama. It is, in short, one revolution of the wheel, or planetary chain, which is composed of 7 globes, or 7 separate wheels, in another sense, this time. When evolution has run downward into matter, from planet A to G, or Z, as the Western students call it, it is one round, in the middle of the fourth revolution, which is our present round. Evolution has reached its acme of physical development, crowned its work with the perfect physical man, and from the point begins its work spirit word. All this needs little repetition, as it well explained in esoteric Buddhism, which was hardly touched upon, and of which that little that was said has misled many, is the origin of man, and it is upon that a little more light may now be thrown, just enough to make the stanza more comprehensible, as the process will be fully explained only in its legitimate place in Book 2. Now, every round on the descending scale is but a repetition in a more concrete form of round which preceded it, as every globe down to our fourth sphere, the actual Earth, is a grosser and more material copy of more shadowy sphere, which proceeds in their successive order on the three higher planes. On its way upwards on the ascending arc, evolution spiritualizes and etherealizes, so to speak, the general nature of all, bringing it on to a level with the plane on which the twin globe on the opposite side is placed. The result being that when the seventh globe is reached, in whatever round, the nature of everything that is evolving returns to the condition it was in at its starting point, plus every time a new and superior degree in the state of consciousness. Thus, it becomes clear that the origin of man, so-called on this present round or life cycle on this planet, must occupy the same place in the same order, save details based on local conditions and time, as in the preceding round. Again, it must be explained and remembered that as the work of each round is said to be apportioned to a different group of so-called creators or architects, so is that of every globe. It is to understand the supervision and guidance of special builders and watchers, the various Dayan Kohans. The group of the hereditary, which is commissioned to create men in a special group, then yet it evolved shadowy men in this cycle, just as a higher and even still more spiritual group evolved him in the third round. But as it is the sixth on the downward scale of spirituality, the last and seventh being the terrestrial spirits, elementals, which gradually form, build, and condense his physical body. The sixth group evolves no more than the future man's shadowy form, a filmy, hardly visible, transparent copy of themselves. It becomes the task of the fifth hierarchy, the mysterious beings that preside over the constellation Copernicus, Maraca, or crocodile in India as in Egypt, to inform the empty and ethereal animal from and make of it rational man. This is one of those subjects upon which very little may be said to general public. It is a mystery, truly, but only to him who is prepared to reject the existence of intellectual and conscious spiritual beings in the universe, limiting fully consciousness to man alone, and that only as a function of the brain. Many are those among the spiritual entities who have incarnated bodily in man since the beginning of his appearance, and who for all that still exist as independently as they did before in the infinitudes of space. To put it more clearly, the indivisible entity may be bodily present on Earth without abandoning, however, its status and function in the supersensuous regions. If this needs explanation, we can do no better than remind the reader of the like cases in spiritualism, though such cases are very rare, at least as regards to nature of an entity incarnating or taking temporary possession of a medium. Just as certain persons, men and women, reverting to parallel cases among living persons, whether by virtue of a peculiar organization, or through the power of acquired mystic knowledge, can be seen in their double in one place when the body in many miles away. So the same can be occurred in the case of superior beings. Doppelgangers. Doppelgangers exist. Man, physiologically considered, is in his outward form simply an animal, hardly more perfect than his pithecoid-like ancestor of the third round. He is living body, not a living being. Since the realization of existence, the ego sum necessitates self-consciousness, as an animal can only have direct consciousness or instinct. This was so well understood by the ancients that the Kabbalists even made of the soul body two lives, independent of each other. The soul, whose body vehicle is the astral, ethereal, substantial envelope, could die and man be living on earth. The soul could free itself from the tabernacle of various reasons, such as insanity, spiritual and physical depravity. Therefore, that which living men initiates can do, the Dihans, who have no physical body to hamper them, can do still better. This was the belief of the antediluvians, and it is fast becoming that modern intellectual society and spiritualism, besides the Greek and Roman churches, which teach the ubiquity of their angels. The Zoroastrians regarded their Amashapens, I don't think I said that right, as dual entities, applying this duality in esoteric philosophy, at any rate, to all the spiritual and individual daizens of the numberless worlds in space which are visible to our eye. In a note of Damascus, 6th century, on the Chaldean oracles, we have a triple evidence of the universality of this doctrine, for he says, quote, in these oracles, the seven cosmo-creators of the world pillars, mentioned likewise by St. Paul, are double, one set being commissioned to rule the superior worlds, the spiritual and the sidereal, and the other to guide and watch over the worlds of matter. End quote. Such is also the opinion of Jambulicus, who makes an evident distinction between the archangels and the archanites. The above may be applied, of course, to the distinction made between the degrees of orders of spiritual beings, and is in the sense that the Roman Catholic Church tries to interpret and teach the difference. For while the archangels are in her teaching divine and holy, their doubles are denounced by her as devils. But the word Führer is not to be understood in this sense, for it means simply the reverse or the opposite side of some attribute or quality. Thus, when the occultists say that the demon is the lining of God, evil the reverse of the metal, he does not mean two separate actualities, but the two aspects or facets of the same unity. Now the best man living would appear side by side with an angelic, as described in theology, a fiend. Hence a certain reason to depreciate a lower double, immersed far deeper in the material than its original. But there is still a little cause to regard them as devils, and this is precisely what the Roman Catholic maintained against all reason and logic. The concluding sentence of this sloka shows how archaic is the belief and the doctrine that man is sevenfold in his constitution, the thread of being which animates man and passes through all his personalities or rebirths on this earth, an illusion, the thread on which, moreover, all his spirits are strung, is spun from the essence of the threefold, the fourfold, and the fivefold, which contain all the preceding. We shall see further on that the connection there is between the celibate and chaste sons of Brahma, who refuse to multiply in terrestrial mortals. Meanwhile, it is evident that the man plant, Sapta Purana, thus refers to the 7 principles, and man is compared to the 7-leaved plant of the name, so sacred among Buddhists. Stanza 4. Well, no. Stanza 7, part 4. Sorry, guys. My brain is bananas. It is the root that never dies, the 3-tongued flame of the 4 wicks. The wicks are the sparks that draw from the 3-tongued flame, their upper triad, shut out by the 7, their flame, the beams and sparks of one moon, reflected in the running waves of all the rivers of the earth. The 3-tongued flame that never dies is the immortal spiritual triad, the Atma, Buddha, and Manas, the fruition of later, assimilated by the first 2 after every terrestrial life. The 4 wicks that go out are extinguished, or the 4 lower principles, including the body. Quote, I am the 3-wick flame, and my wicks are immortal, end quote, says the defunct. I enter into the domain of Skechem, the god whose arm sows the seed of action produced by the disembodied soul, and I enter the region of the flames, who have destroyed their adversaries. Got rid of sin-creating 4 wicks, the Book of the Dead, and the mysteries of Ro-Stan. Just as milliards of bright sparks dance on the waters of an ocean, above which one and the same moon is shining, so our evanescent personalities, the elusive envelopes of the immortal monad ego, twinkle and dance on the waves of Maya. They last and appear as the thousands of sparks produced by the moonbeams, only so long as the queen of the night radiates her lustre on the running waters of life, the period of Manavatra, and then they disappear, the beams, symbols of our eternal spiritual egos, alone surviving, re-emerged in and being, as they were before, one with the mother source. I'm going to read also part 5. The spark hangs from the flame by the finest thread of Fohat. It journeys through the 7 worlds of Maya. It stops in the first kingdom and is a metal and a stone. It passes into the second kingdom, and behold a plant. The plant whirls through 7 forms and becomes a sacred animal. From the combined attributes of these Manu, the thinker is formed. Who formed him? The 7 lives and the 1 life. Who completes him? The 5-fold lie, or la. And who perfects the last body? Fish, sin, and soma, the moon. The phrase through the 7 worlds of Maya refers here to the 7 globes of the planetary chain and the 7 rounds, or the 49 stations of active existence that are before the spark, or monad, at the beginning of every great life cycle, or Manavantara. The thread of Fohat is the thread of life before referred to. This relates to the greatest problem of philosophy. Sorry, guys, my eyeballs. The physical and substantial nature of life, the independent nature of which is denied by modern science because the science is unable to comprehend it. The reincarnationists and believers of karma alone dimly perceive that the whole secret of life is the unbroken series of its manifestations, whether in or apart from the physical body, because if life, like a dome of many-colored glass, stains the white radiance of eternity, yet it is itself part and parcel of the eternity, for life alone can understand life. What is that spark which hangs from the flame? It is Java. The monad is conjunct with manas, or rather its aroma, that which remains from each personality when worthy and hangs from Atma Buddha, the flame, by the thread of life. In whatever way interpreted and into whatever number of principles a human being is divided, it may easily be shown that this doctrine is supported by all the ancient religions, from the Vedic to the Egyptian, from the Zoroastrian to the Jewish. In the case of the last mentioned, the Kabbalistic works offer abundant proof of this statement. The entire system of the Kabbalistic numerals is based on the divine sepulchre hanging from the triad, thus forming the decad. And its permutation 7, 5, 4, and 3, which finally all merge into one itself, an endless and boundless circle. And if you check out The Secret Teachings of All Ages, I just read the whole Pythagorean number system, and this is mentioned there. Just to say. The deity, the ever-invisible presence, says Zohar, manifests itself through the 10 Sephiroth, which are its radiating witness. The deity is like the sea, from which outflows a stream called wisdom, the waters of which fall into a lake named intelligence. From the basin, like 7 channels, issued 7 Sephiroth. For 10 equals 7, the decade contains 4 unities and 3 binaries. The 10 Sephiroth correspond to the limbs of man. When I frame Adam Kadmon, the Elohim are made to say the spirit of the eternal shot out of his body like a sheet of lightning that radiate at once on the billows of the 7 millions of skies. And my 10 splendors were his limbs, but neither the head nor the shoulders of Adam Kadmon can be seen. Therefore, we read the Sephra Dayan Zutha, the book of the concealed mystery. I don't think I got that right either. In the beginning of time, after the Elohim, the sons of light and life, or the builders, had shaped out of the eternal essence the heavens and the earth, they formed the worlds 6 by 6, the 7th being Malkuth, which is our earth, on the plane and the lowest on all the other planes of conscious existence. The Chaldean Book of Numbers contains a detailed explanation of all this. The first triad of the body of Adam Kadmon, the 3 upper planes of the 7, cannot be seen before the soul stands in the presence of the Ancients of Days. Where have we heard that before? Urantia. The Sephiroth of this upper triad are Kether, the crown, represented by the brow of Microprosporus, Shakma, wisdom, a male principle, by his right shoulder, and Bina, intelligence, a female principle, by the left shoulder. Then come the 7 limbs, or Sephiroth, on the planes of manifestation, the totality of these 4 planes being represented in Microprosporus. Or tetragrammaton, the 4-lettered mystery, the 7 manifold and the 3 concealed limbs of the body of the deity. Thus our earth, Malkuth, is both the 7th and the 4th world, the former when counting from the first globe above, the latter it reckoned by the planes. It is generated by the 6th globe or Sephiroth called Yezad, foundation, or as said in the Book of Numbers by Yezad, he, Adam Kadmon, fundicates the primitive Hiva, Eve, or our earth. Rendered in mystic language, this is the explanation but why Malkuth called the inferior mother Matrona queen, and the kingdom of the foundation is shown as the bride of Tetragrammaton, or Microprosporus, and the second logos, the heavenly man, When free from all impurity, she will become united with the spiritual logos. In the seventh race of the seventh round after the regeneration on the day of Sabbath, for the seventh day has again an occult significance undreamt of our theologians. When Matrothea, the mother, is separated and brought face to face with the king in the excellence of the Sabbath, all things become one body, says verse 746 in chapter 22, I want to say that might be. And I cannot pronounce it. Becomes one body means that all is reabsorbed once more into one element, the spirits of man becoming nirvanis, and the elements of everything else becoming again what they were before. Protyle are undifferentiated substance. Sabbath means rest or nirvana. It is not the seventh day after 6 days, but a period the duration of which equals that of 7 days, or any period made up of 7 parts. This pralaya is equal to, in duration, to the Manvantraya, or a night of Rama is equal to this day. If the Christians would follow Jewish customs, they ought to adopt the spirit and not the dead letter thereof, to work 1 week and 7 days and rest 7 days. That the word Sabbath had a mystical significance is shown in the contempt shown by Jesus for the Sabbath day and by what it said in Luke. Sabbath is there taken from the whole week. See Greek text where the week is called Sabbath. I fast twice in the Sabbath. Paul, an initiate, knew it well when referring to the eternal rest and felicity in heaven as Sabbath. And their happiness will be eternal, for they will ever be one with the Lord and enjoy an eternal Sabbath. The difference between the two systems, taking the Kabbalah as contained in the Chaldean Book of Numbers, not as misrepresented by now disfigured copy, the Kabbalah of the Christian mystics, the Kabbalah and the archaic esoteric Vedya, is very small indeed, being confined to an unimportant divergence of form and expression. Thus, Eastern occultism refers to our earth as the fourth world, the lowest of the chain, above which run upward on both its sides the 6 globes, 3 on each side. The Zohar, on the other hand, calls the earth the lower or the 7th, adding that upon the 6th depend all things which are in it. Macro, prospos. The smaller face, smaller because manifested in infinite, is formed of 6 Sipharoth, says the same work. 7 kings come and die in thrice destroyed world. Malkuth, our earth, destroyed after each of the 3 rounds which it has gone through. And their reign of the 7 kings will be broken up. This relates to the 7th races, 5 of which have already appeared, and 2 more have still to appear in this round. The Shinto allegory accounts of cosmogony and the origin of man in Japan hint at the same belief. Captain C. Profounds studied for nearly 9 years in the monasteries of Japan the religion underlying the various sects of the land. The Shinto idea of creation, he says, is as follows. Out of chaos, kantan, the earth, in, was the sentiment participated, and the heavens, yo, the ethereal essences which ascend, ma, jin, appear between the two. The first man was called Kuni, 2, Ko, Tashino, Mikoto, and 5 other names were given to him, and in the human race appeared male and female. Ishangi and Isanami begot Tinshoko Dinjin, the first of the 5 gods of the earth. These gods are simply our 5 races. Ishangi and Ishami being the two kinds of the ancestors, the two preceding races which give birth to animal and rational man. It will be shown that the number 7, as well as the doctrine of the cemetery constitution of man, was preeminent in all the secret system. It plays an important part in Western Kabbalah, as in Eastern occultism. Apicius Levi calls the number 7 the key to the Mosaic creation and symbols of everyday religion. He shows the Kabbalah following faithfully even the cemetery division of man, as the diagram he gives in his Clef des Grands Mysteries in cemetery. This may be seen as a glimpse. Guys, I cannot read that in another language because I butcher the shit. However, cleverly, the correct thought is veiled. One needs only to look at the diagram, and I can show you that in a minute. The formation of the soul from the same key of great mysteries by Levi, and found the same through the different interpretations. Thus, it stands both with the Kabbalistic and the occult names attached. Hang on. This is what they're talking about right here. We will now give in our tabular form what the very cautious Apicius Levi says in explanation of his diagram and what the esoteric doctrine teaches and compared to the two. Levi, too, makes a distinction between Kabbalistic and occult pneumatics. Says Apicius Levi, the Kabbalist. The Kabbalistic pneumatics. 1, the soul or ego is clothed light, and this light is triple. The Neshmam, not saying that right, pure spirit, Rucha, the soul or spirit, Nefesh, classic meditator. The Theosophists, esoteric pneumatics, ditto, for it is Atma Buddhai Manas. Ditto, spiritual soul, mediator between spirit and its man, the seat of reason, the mind in man. So that's 1 through 4. 5, on the Kabbalistic pneumatics, the garment of the soul is the ride body of the image astral soul. The image 6, the image is double because it reflects the good as the bad. 7, imago body. Occult, okay, it ends there. 5, correct. 6, and this is the Theosophists, to uselessly apocalyptic. Why not say that the astral reflects the good as well as the bad man? Man who is ever tending to the upper triangle or else disappears with the quaternary. Ditto the earthly image. Sorry, guys, it breaks up in a weird way in this book. Occult pneumatics, as given by Apicius Levi. Nefesh is immortal because it renews its life by the destruction of forms. But Nefesh, the breath of life, is a misnomer and a useless puzzle to the student. Rucha progresses by the evolution of ideas. Neshma is progressive without oblivion and destruction. The soul has 3 dwellings. These dwellings are the plane of the mortals, the superior Eden, and the inferior Eden. The image man is a sphinx that offers the riddle of birth. The fatal image, the astral, endows Nefesh with the aptitudes, but Rucha is available to substitute for the violated Nefesh, the image, conquered in accordance with the inspirations of Nimisha. Now back to occult pneumatics. Manas is immortal because every new incarnation, it adds Atma Buddha, something of itself, and thus assimilating itself to the monad, shares its immortality. Buddhi becomes conscious by the accreditations it gets from manas after every new incarnation and death of man. Atma neither progresses, forgets, nor remembers. It does not belong to this plane. It is but the ray of light eternal, which shines upon through the darkness of matter when the latter is willing. The soul, collectively as the upper triad, lives on three planes besides its fourth, the terrestrial sphere, and it exists eternally on the highest of the three. These dwellings are earth for the physical man or the animal soul, karma, loka, Hades, the limbo, for the disembodied man or his shell, dimension for the higher triad. Correct. The astral, through karma, desire, is ever drawing manas down into the sphere of material passion and desires. But if the better man or manas tries to escape, the fatal attraction turns its aspirations to Atma, spirit, the Buddhi, Rach, conquers and carries manas with it to the realm of eternal spirit. Oh my goodness. It is very evident that the French Kabbalist either did not know sufficiently the real tenet or distorted it to suit himself and his object. Thus he says again, treating upon the same subject, and we occultists answer the late Kabbalist and his admirers. 1. The body is the mold of Nefesh, the mold of Rach, and the Rach mold of the garments of Nishma. The other one. The body follows the whims, good or bad, of manas. Manas tries to follow the light of Buddhi, but often fails. Buddha is the mold of the garments of Atma, because Atma is no body or shape or anything, and because Buddha is its vehicle only figuratively. Light, the soul personifies in clothing itself with the body, and personality endures only when the garment is perfect. 2. The monad becomes a personal ego when it incarnates, and something remains of that personality through manas, when the latter is perfect enough to assimilate Buddhi. 3. The angels aspire to become men, a perfect man, a man God is above all the angels. 3. Correct. Every 14,000 years, the soul rejuvenates or rests in the Jubilean sleep of oblivion. Within a period of a great age or a day of Brahma, 14 manas reign, after which comes Pralaya, when all the souls rest in nirvana, soul's ego. Such are the distorted copies of the esoteric doctrine in the Kabbalah, but see also the primeval manas of humanity. The well-known Kabbalistic aphorism runs, a stone becomes a plant a beast, the beast a man a spirit, and the spirit a god. The spark animates all the kingdoms in turn before it enters into and informs divine man, between whom and his predecessor animal man there is all the difference in the world. Genesis begins its anthropology at the wrong end, evidently for a blind, and lands nowhere. Had it begun as it ought, one would have found it in, first, the celestial logos, the heavenly man, which evolves as the compound unit of logi, out of whom, after their paralytic sleep, a sleep that gathers the ciphers scattered on the Mayavic plane into one, as a separate globules of quicksilver on a plate blend into one mass, the logi appear in their totality as the first, male and female, or Adam Kadmon, the fiat lux of the Bible, as we have already seen. But the transformation did not take place on our earth, nor any material plane, but in special depths of the first differentiation of the eternal root matter. On our nascent globe, things proceed differently. The monad, or Java, as said in Isis Unveiled, is first of all shot down by the law of evolution into the lowest form of matter, the mineral. After a sevenfold gyration encased in the stone, or that would become mineral and stone in the fourth round, it creeps out of it, says, as a lichen, passing thence through all forms of vegetable matter into what is termed animal matter. It has now reached the point in which it has become the germ, so to speak, of the animal, and that will become the physical man. All this up to the third round is formless as matter and senseless as consciousness. For the monad, or Java per se, cannot be even called spirit. It is a ray, a breath of the absolute, or the absoluteness rather, said the absolute homogeneity, having no relations with the condition of relative finiteness in unconsciousness on our plane. Therefore, besides the material which will be needed for its future human form, the monad requires a spiritual model or prototype for the material to shape itself into, and an intelligent consciousness to guide its evolution and progress, neither of which is possessed by the homogeneous monad or by senseless though living matter. The atom of dust requires the soul of life to be breathed into him. The two middle principles, which are the sentient life of the irrational animal and the human soul, for the former is irrational without the latter. It is only when, from a potential androgyny, man has become separated into male and female, that he will be endowed with this conscious, rational individual soul, manas, the principle or the intellects of the Elohim, to receive which he has to eat of the fruit of knowledge from the tree of good and evil. How is he to obtain all this? The occult doctrine teaches that while the monad is cycling on downward into matter, these very Elohim or Pitras, the lower Daihan Kohans, are evolving pari passu with it on a higher and more spiritual plane, descending also relatively into matter on their own plane of consciousness, when after having reached a certain point, they will meet the incarnating senseless monad encased in the lower matter, and blending the two potencies, spirit and matter, the union will produce that terrestrial symbol of the heavenly man in space, perfect man. In the Sankhya philosophy, Purusha, spirit, is spoken of something impotent unless he mounts on the shoulders of Prati, matter, which left alone is senseless. But in the secret philosophy, they view as graduated, the one of the same thing in their origin, spirit and matter, when once they are on a plane of differentiation, begin each of them their evolutionary progress in contrary directions, spirit falling gradually into matter and the latter ascending to its original condition, that of a pure spiritual substance, both an inseparable yet ever separated. In polarity on the physical plane, two like poles will always repel each other, while the negative and the positive are mutually attracted. So do spirit and matter stand to each other, the two poles of the same homogeneous substance, the root principle of the universe. Yes, I see the lights going blinkety blink. Therefore, when the hour strikes for Purusha to mount on Parati's shoulders for the formation of the perfect man, rudimentary man of the first races, being only the first, gradually evolving into the most perfect of mammals, the celestial ancestors, entities from preceding worlds, called in India the Shikta, step in on their own plane, as the Pitras had stepped in before them for the formation of the physical or animal man and incarnate in the latter. Thus, the two processes from the two creations, the animal and the divine man, differ greatly. The Pitras shoot out from their ethereal bodies, still more ethereal and shadowy similitudes of themselves, or what we would now call doubles, or astral forms in their own likeness. This furnishes the monad with its first dwelling, and blind matter with a model around and upon which to build forth henceforth. Both man is still incapable from oh my goodness, can't do it, from whom descended the seven primitive manas, or Prajap. Yep, that. Sorry, guys, I can't. I'm already having issues with my teeth dropping out of my mouth. Each of whom gave birth to a primitive race of men, down to the Codex Nazareth, in which Karabantos or Fetahil find conclusive matter. Begets on his mother Spiritus, seven figures, each of which stands on the progenitor of one of the primeval races. This doctrine has left to impress on every archaic scripture. Who forms Manu, the man, and who forms his body, the life and the lives, saint and the sin and the moon. Here, Manu stands for the spiritual, heavenly man, the real and non-dying ego in us, which the direct emanation of the one life, or the absolute deity. As to our outward physical bodies, the house of the tabernacle of the soul, the doctrine teaches a strange lesson, so strange that unless thoroughly explained and as rightly comprehended, it is only the exact science of the future that is destined to vindicate the theory fully. It has been stated before now that the occultism does not accept anything inorganic in the cosmos. The expressions employed by science, inorganic substance, means simply that the latent life slumbering in the molecules of so-called inert matter is incognizable. All life and every atom of every mineral dust is a life, though beyond our comprehension and perception, because it is outside the range of laws known to those who reject occultism. The very atom, says Tyndall, seemed instinct with a desire for life. Whence then, we would ask, comes the tendency to run into organic form? It is in any way inexplicable, except according to the teachings of occult science. Quote, the worlds to the profane, says the commentary, are built up in the known elements to the conception of Arhat. These elements are themselves collectively a divine life, distributively on the plane of manifestation, the numberless and countless crosses of life. Fire alone is one on the plane of one. Reality on that of manifested, hence elusive, being its particles are fiery lives which live in their being at the expense of every other life that they consume. Therefore, they are named the devourers. Every visible thing in the universe was built by such lives, from conscious and divine primordial man down to the unconscious agents that construct matter. From the one life, formless and uncreated, proceeds the universe of lives. First was manifested from the deep chaos, cold, luminous fire, gaseous light, which from the curds in space, irrevocable nebulae perhaps. These fought, and a great heat was developed by the encountering and collision, which produced rotation. Then came the first manifested material, Fire, the hot flames, the wanderers in heaven. Comets. Heat generates moist vapor that forms solid water. Then dry mist, then liquid mist, watery, that puts out the luminous brightness of the pilgrims, comets, and forms solid watery wheels, matter globes. Brumi, the earth, appears with 6 sisters. They produce by their continuous motion the inferior fire, heat, and aqueous mist, which yields the third world element, water, and from the breath of all atmosphere, air is born. These 4 are the 4 lives of the first 4 period rounds of Manavatra. The 3 last will follow, end quote. This means that every new round develops one of the compound elements, as now known to science, which rejects the primitive nomenclature, preferring to subdivide them into constituents. If nature is the ever becoming on the manifested plane, then those elements are to be regarded in the same light. They have to evolve, progress, and increase to the monovatric end. Thus, the first round, we are taught, developed but one element, and the nature of humanity and what may be called the aspect of nature, called by some very unscientifically, though it may be so de facto, the one-dimensional space. The second round brought forth and developed 2 elements, fire and earth, and its humanity adapted to this condition of nature. If we can give the name humanity to being living under conditions unknown to men, was to be used again a familiar phrase in a strictly figurative sense, the only way in which it could be used correctly, a 2-dimensional species, the process of natural development, which we are now considering, will at one alluded and discredit the fashion of speculating on the attributes of the 2, 3, and 4 or more dimensional space. But in passing, it is worthwhile to point out the real significance of the sound but incomplete intuition that has prompted among spiritualists and theosophists, and several great men of science, for the matter of that, the use of the modern expression, the 4th dimension of space, to begin with, of course, the superficial absurdity of assuming that space itself is measurable in any direction is of little consequence. The familiar phrase can only be abbreviated of the fuller form, the 4th dimension of matter in space. But it is an unhappy phrase, even thus expanded, because while it is perfectly true that the progress of evolution may be destined to introduce us to new characteristics of matter, those with which we are already familiar are really more numerous than the 3 dimensions. The faculties, or what is perhaps the best available term, the characteristics of matter, must clearly bear a direct relation always to the senses of man. Matter has extension, color, motion, molecular motion, taste, and smell corresponding to the existent senses of man. And by that time that it fully develops the next characteristic, let us call it for a moment permeability. This will correspond to the next sense of man. Let us call it normal clairvoyance. Thus, when some bold thinkers have been thirsting for a 4th dimension to explain the passage of matter through matter and the production of knots upon an endless cord, what they were really in want of was the 6th characteristic of matter. The 3 dimensions belong really but to one attribute or characteristic of matter, extension, and popular common sense justly rebels against the idea that under any condition of things, there can be more than 3 of such dimensions as length, breadth, and thickness. These terms and the term dimension itself all belong to one plane of thought, to one stage of evolution, to one characteristic of matter. So long as there are foot rules within the resources of cosmos to apply to matter, so long will they be able to measure it 3 ways and no more. And from the time the idea of measurement first occupied the place in the human understanding, it has been possible to apply measurement in the 3 directions and no more. But the consideration to do not militate in any way against the certainty that in the progress of time, as the faculties of humanity are multiplied, so will the characteristic of matter be multiplied also. Meanwhile, the expression is far more incorrect than ever the familiar one of the sun rising or setting. We now return to the consideration of material evolution through the rounds. Matter in the second round is, it has been stated, may figuratively refer to as two-dimensional, but here another caveat must be entered. That loose and figurative expression may be regarded in one plane of thought, as we have just seen, as an equivalent to the second characteristic of matter corresponding to the second perceptive faculty or sense of man. But these two linked scales of evolution are concerned with the process going on within the limits of a single round. The succession of primarily aspects of nature with which the succession of rounds is concerned has to do, as already indicated, with the development of the elements in the occult sense: fire, air, water, earth. We are only in the fourth round, and our catalog so far stops short. The centuries of consciousness destined to develop into humanity, as we know it, on the third round arrive at the perception of the third element, water. Those of the fourth round have added earth as a state of matter to their stock, as well as the three other elements in their present transformation. In short, none of the so-called elements were in the three preceding rounds, as they are now. For all we know, fire may have been pure akasha, the first matter of the magnum opus of the creators and builders, an astral light, which the paradoxical Officius Levi calls the breath, the body of the Holy Ghost, and in the next Baphomet, the androgyny goat of Mendes. Air, simple nitrogen, the breath of the supporters of the heavenly dome, as the Motmet mystics call it. Water, the primordial fluid, which was required according to Moses to make a living soul with. And this may account for the fragment discrepancies and unscientific statements found in Genesis. Separate the first from the second chapter, read the former as scripture of the Elohists, and the latter as that of the far younger Jehovists. Still, one finds, if one reads between the lines, in the same order in which things created appear, namely fire, light, air, water, and man, or the earth, for the sentence, in the beginning God created heaven and earth, is a mistranslation. It is not heaven and earth, but the duplex or dual heaven, the upper and the lower heavens, or the separation of primordial substance that was light in its upper and dark in its lower portion, or the manifested universe. In its duality of the invisible to the senses and the visible to our perceptions, God divided the light from the darkness, and then made the firmament, air, a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters. The waters which were under the firmament are manifested visible universe, from the waters above the firmament, or the to us invisible planes of being. In the second chapter, the Jehovists, plants and herbs are created before water, just as the first light is produced before the sun. God made the earth and the heavens and every plant of the field before it was the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For the Elohim gods had not caused it to rain before the earth, an absurdity unless the esoteric explanation is accepted. The plants were created before they were in the earth, for there was no earth then such as it is now. The herb of the field was in existence before it grew. It does now into the fourth round. Serious shit. Discussing and explaining the nature of the invisible elements and the primordial fire mentioned above, Officius Levi calls it invariably the astral light. It is the grand agent magique with him. Undeniably, it is so, but only so far as black magic is concerned, and on the lowest planes of what we call ether, the noumenum of which is akasha, and even this would be held incorrect by the orthodox occultists. The astral light is simply the older sidereal light of Paracelsus, and to say that everything which exists have been evolved from it and is preserves and reproduces all forms, as he writes, is to emulate truth only in the second proposition. The first is erroneous, for if all that exists was evolved through or via it, it is not the astral light. The latter is not the container of all things, but only the reflector at best of this all. Officius Levi writes, the great magic agent is the fourth emanation of life principle. We say it is the first in the inner and the second in the outer. Our universe, of which the sun is the third form. For the day star, the sun, is only reflection and material shadow of the central sun of truth, which illuminates the intellectual, indivisible world of spirit, and which itself is but a gleam borrowed from the absolute. So far, he is right enough, but when the great authority of the Western Kabbalists adds in nevertheless, it is not the immortal spirit, as the Indian Hierophants had imagined. We answer that he slanders, that the Hierophants, as they have said, nothing of the kind, while either the Puranic, erotic writings flatly contradict the assertion. No Hindu has ever mistaken Parkarati, the astral light, being only above the lowest plane of Parati, the material cosmos, where the immortal spirit, Parati, is ever called Maya, illusion, and is doomed to disappear with the rest of the gods, included of the hour Pralaya. For it is shown that Akasha is not even the ether, least of all. Then we imagine can it be the astral light. Those unable to penetrate beyond the dead letter of the Puranas have occasionally confused Akasha with Parati, with ether, and either with the visible sky. It is true also that those who have invariably translated the term Akasha from ether, finding it called the material cause of sound, possessing moreover the one single property, having ignorantly imaged to be material in the physical sense. True again that if the characteristics are accepted literally, then, since nothing material or physical and therefore conditioned and temporary can be immortal according to the metaphysics and philosophy, it would follow the Akasha is neither infinite or immortal. But all this is erroneous, since both the words Purana, primeval matter, and sound as property have been misunderstood. The former term, padhana, being certainly synonymous with the mulkaprati, and akasha, the latter, sound with the verbum, the word of the logos. This is easily demonstrated, for it is shown in the following sentence in Vishnu Purana. In the beginning there was neither day nor night, nor sky nor earth, no darkness nor light, save only one unapprehensible by intellect, or that which Brahma and Pum's spirit and Purana primordial matter. Now, what is padhana, if not mula parati, the root of all in another aspect? For prahana, though, said further on, to merge into the deity as everything else does, in order to leave the one absolute during pralaya, yet it is held an infinite and immortal. The commentator describes the deity as one pranhata, Brahma spirit that was, and interprets the compound term as substantive, not as derivative word used attributively, like something conjoined with prahana. Hence, prahana, even in the Puranas, is an aspect of Parabrahma, not an evolution, and must be the same as Vedic Mula Prakti. Prakti is the primary state in Akasha, says the Vedic scholar, 5 years of Theosophy. It is almost abstract nature. Akasha then is pradhana in another form, and as such cannot be ether, the ever-invisible agent courted even by physical science. Nor is it astral light. It is said the noumenon of sevenfold differentiated prakti, the ever immaculate mother, or the fatherless son who becomes father, or the lower manifested plane, for Mahat is the first product of Prayana, or Akasha, and Mahat, universal intelligence, whose characteristic properly is Buddhi, is no other than the Logos, for it is called Iswara, Brahma, Brava. He is, in short, the creator or the divine mind in creative operation, the cause of all things. He is the firstborn of who the Puranas tell us Mahat and matter are in the outer boundaries of the universes, or in our language, the negative and positive poles of dual nature, abstract and concrete, for the Purana adds, in this manner, as were the 7 forms, principles, Prakti reckoned from Mahat to earth, so at the time of Pralaya, these 7 successfully re-entered into each other. The egg of Brahma, Sarva Mandala, is dissolved with the 7 zones, Dipwa, 7 oceans, 7 regions. There are reasons why the occultists refuse to give the name of the astral light to Akasha or call it ether. In my father's house are many mansions. Many be contrasted with the occult saying, in our mother's house there are 7 mansions, or planes, the lowest of which is above and around us, the astral light. The elements, whether simple or compound, could not have remained the same since the commencement of the evolution of our chain. Everything in the universe progresses steadily in the great cycle, while incessantly going up and down in the smaller cycles. Nature is never stationary during Manavatra, as it is ever becoming, not simply being, and mineral vegetation and human life are always adapting their organisms to the then reigning elements, and therefore those elements were there fitted for them, as they are now for the life of present humanity. It will only be in the next or 5th round that the 5th element, ether, the gross body of Akasha, if it can be called even that, will be by becoming a familiar fact of nature to all men, as air is familiar to us now, cease to be at present hypothetical and also agent for so many things. And only during the round will those higher senses, the growth and development of which Akasha subverses, be susceptible of a complete expansion, as already indicated. Partial familiarity with the characteristics of matter, preeminently which should be developed concurrently with the 6th sense, may be expected to develop at the proper period in this round. But the next element added to our resources in the next round, I can't project this word, guys. Permeability, will become a manifestive characteristic of matter, that the densest forms of this will be seen in man's perceptions as obstructive, to him as a thick fog and no more. Let us return to the life cycle now, without entering at length upon the description given at higher lives. We must direct our attention at present simply to the earthly beings and the earth itself. The latter, we are told, is built up for the first round by the devourers, which disintegrate and differentiate the germs of other lives in the elements pretty much. It must be supposed, as in present stage of the world, the aerobes do, when undermining and loosening the chemical structure in any organism, they transform animal matter and generate substances that vary in their constitutions. Thus, occultism disposes of all the so-called Azoic age of science, for it shows that never was a time when the earth was without life upon it. Wherever there is an atom of matter, a particle, or a molecule, even in its most gaseous condition, there is life. It, however latent and unconscious, whatsoever quits the laya state becomes active life. It is drawn into the vortex of motion, the alchemical solvent of life. Spirit and matter are the two states of one, which is neither spirit nor matter, both being the absolute life latent. Spirit is the first differentiation of and in space, and matter the first differentiation of spirit, that which is neither spirit nor matter, that is it, the causeless and cause of spirit and matter, which are the cause of cosmos, and that we call the one life, or the intra-cosmic breath. Once more, we will say that like most produce like, absolute life cannot produce an inorganic atom, whether single or complex, and there is life even in the laya, just as man in a profound catapultic state, in all appearance a corpse, is still a living being. When the devourers in which and in whom this men of science are invited to see, with some show of reason, atoms of the fire mist, if they will, as occultists will refer, no objection to this, when the devourers, we say, have differentiated the fire atoms by a peculiar process of segmentation, the latter becomes life germs, which agitate according to the laws of cohesion and infinity. Then the life germs produce lives of other kind, which work on the structure of our globes. Thus, in the first round, the globe having been built by the primitive live fire, formed into sphere, had no solidity, nor qualifications, save a cold brightness, nor form nor color. It is only towards the end of the first round that it developed one element which, from its inorganic, so to say, or simple essence, became now in our round the fire we know throughout the system. The earth was in her first rupa, the essence of which is the Akashic principle name, that which now known as, very erroneously termed, astral light, which Fescius Levy calls the imagination of nature, probably to avoid giving it correct name as others do. It is through and from radiations of the seven bodies of the seven orders of Dhyans that the seven discrete qualities, elements, whose motion and harmonious union produce the manifested universe of matter, are born. Commentary. The second round brings into manifestation the second element, air, the element the purity of which would ensure continuous life to him who would use it. There have been two occultists only in Europe who have discovered, even partially applied in its practice, though its composition has always been known among the highest Eastern initiates. The ozone of the modern chemist is poison compared with the real universe solvent, which could never be thought of unless it exists in nature. From the second round, Earth here too, a photis in the matrix of space, being its real essence and existence, it had developed individual sentient life. Its second principle, the second corresponding to its sixth principle, the second life continuous, the other temporary. The third round developed the third principle, water, while the fourth transformed the gaseous fluids and plastic form of our globe into the hard-crusted, grossly material sphere we are living on. Brumi has reached her fourth principle. To this, it may be objected that the law of analogy, so much insisted upon, is broken. Not at all. The earth will reach her true ultimate form inversely in this to man, her body shall, only towards the end of the Manavatra, after the seventh round. Eugenus Boethius was right when he assumed and assured his readers on his word of honor that no one has yet seen the earth, matter in its essential form. Our globe is far in the Kamrupic state, the astral body of desires and Hamkara, dark egotism, the progeny of Mahat at the lower plane. It is not molecularly constituted matter, least of all the human body, that is in the grossest of our principles, but verily the middle principle, the real animal center, whereas our bodies is but its shell, the irresponsible factor and medium through which the beast in us acts all its life. Every intellectual theosophist will understand my real meaning. Thus, the idea of the human tabernacle is built in countless lives, just in the same way as the rocky crust of the earth has nothing repulsive in it for the true mystic, nor can science oppose the occult teaching, for it is not because the microscope will ever fail to detect ultimate living atom or life that it can reject the doctrine. Science teaches us that the living as well as the dead organism is both man and animal are swarming with bacteria of hundreds of various kinds that from without are threatened with the invasion of microbes with every breath we draw, and from within every legumes, aerobes, and whatnot. But science never yet went so far as to assert with the occult doctrine that our bodies, as well as those of animals, plants, and stones, are themselves altogether built up of such beings, which exert larger species no microscope can detect. So far as regards the purely animal and material portion of man, science is on its way to discoveries that will go far towards collaborating this theory. Chemistry and physiology are the two great magicians of the future, where are destined to open the eyes of mankind to the great physical truths. With every day, the identity between the animal and the physical man, between the plant and the man, and even between the reptile and its nest, the rock and man, is more and more clearly shown. The physical and chemical constituents of all being found in the identical chemical science may well say that there is no difference between the matter which composes the ox and that which forms man. But the occult doctrine is far more explicit. It says not only the chemical components are the same, but the same infinitesimal, invisible lives compose the atoms of the bodies of the mountains and the daisy of man and the ant of the elephant of the tree, which shelters him from the sun. Each particle, whether you call it organic or inorganic, is a life. Every atom and molecule in the universe is both life-giving and death-giving to that form, inasmuch as it builds by aggregation universes and ephemeral vehicles, ready to receive the transmigrating soul, and eternally destroys and changes the forms and expels those souls from their temporary abodes. It creates and kills. It is self-generating and self-destroying. It brings into being and annihilates that mystery of mysteries, the living body of the man, animal, or plant. Every second in time and space, it generates equally life and death, beauty and ugliness, good and bad, and even the agreeable and disagreeable, the beneficent and maleficent sensations. It is this that the mysterious life, represented collectively by countless myriads of lives, that follows in its own sporadic way the hereto incomprehensible law of atavism, that copies family resemblance as well as those and finds impressed upon the aura of generations of every future human being, a mystery, in short, that will receive fuller attention elsewhere. For the present, one insists an instance may be cited for an illustration. Modern science begins to find out the potamine, the alkali poison generated by decaying matter and corpses of life, also extracted with the help of volatile ether, yields a smell as strong as equal to that of a freshest orange blossom. But the free from oxygen, these alkaloids yield either a most sickening, disgusting smell, or the most agreeable aroma, which recalls that of the most delicately scented flowers. And it is suspected that each blossom owed their agreeable smell to the poisonous potamine, the venomous essence of certain mushrooms, fungi, being nearly identical with the venom of the cobra of India, the most deadly of serpents. Thus, having discovered the effects, science has to find the primary causes, and this it can never do without the help of old science, of alchemy, occult botany, and physics. We are taught that every physiological change in the addition of pathological phenomena, diseases, nigh life itself, or rather objective phenomena of life, produced by certain conditions and changes in the tissues of the body which allow life force to act in the body, that all that is due to the unseen creators and destroyers that are called in such a loose and general way microbes, such experimenters of pasture are the best friends and helpers of the destroyers and the worst enemies of the creators. It is the latter were not at the same time destroyers too. However it may be, one thing is sure in this: the knowledge of these primary causes of the ultimate essence of every element of its lives, their functionings, properties, and conditions of change constitutes the basis of magic. Paracelsus was, perhaps, the only occultist in Europe during the last century since the Christian era who was versed in the mystery. Had not a criminal hand put an end to his life years before the time allotted him by nature, physiological magic would have fewer secrets from the civilized world than it has now. But that has the moon to do in all of this? We might ask, what has fish, sin, and moon in the apocalyptic saying of the stanza to do in company with life microbes? With the latter nothing except availing themselves of the tabernacle of clay prepared by them. With divine perfect man everything, since fish, sin, and moon make conjointly the three symbols of the immortal being. This is all that can be given, nor does the writer pretend to know more of the strange symbol than being inferred about in esoteric religions from the mystery, perhaps, which underlies the Mystaya fish, avatar of Vishnu, the Chaldean Onins, and the man-fish recorded in the imperishable sign of the zodiac Pisces, and running throughout the two testaments in the personages of Joshua, the son of the fish, Nun, and the Jesus, the allegorical sin or fall of spirit into matter, and the moon, insofar as it relates to the lunar ancestor of Pitris. For the present, it may be as well to remind the reader, while the moon goddess were connected in every mythology, especially the Grecian, with the childbirth, because of the lunar influence on a woman in conception, the occult and actual conception of our satellite, with fecundation, is this day unknown physiology, which regards every popular practice in the reference of gross superstition, as it is useless to discuss them in detail. Sorry, guys. Wow. We may only stop at present to discuss the lunar symbology casually, to show that the said superstition belongs to the most ancient beliefs, and even in Judaism, the basis of Christianity. With the Israelites, the chief function of Jehovah was child-giving, and the esotericism of the Bible, interpreted by Kabbalistically, shows undeniably the Holy of Holies in the temple of the only one symbol of the womb. This is now proven beyond doubt and cavil by the numerical reading of the Bible in general, and the Genesis especially. This idea must certainly have been borrowed by the Jews from the Egyptians and Indians, whose Holy of Holies was, and with the later is to this same day, symbolized by the King's Chamber and the Great Pyramid, in the Yoni symbols of exoteric Hinduism. To make the whole clearer, and to show to the same time the enormous difference in the spirit interpretations of original meaning of the same symbols between ancient Eastern occultism and the Jewish Kabbalists, were referred to reader to the book 2, the Holy of Holies. I'm going to leave it there, guys. That was a lot of that second portion. Holy crap. My eyes are going beep. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Sending you love and light, and I hope to see you on the next one. Hopefully the next one isn't that far away. Bye, guys.